In the world of hip-hop rap, being gritty makes you stay strong, and rappers are known for their bold and often controversial lyrics. So it's not surprising that we don't often catch the mean insults and disses they exchange with each other because they're hidden within the raw and unfiltered lyrics of their songs. But some do take their outspokenness and disrespect to the courtroom. They may be cool with it, but do they realize when they step out of line? What I'm about to show you are some of the times rappers have been disrespectful during court hearings. Let's see. Young Thug. It seemed like the trial of rapper Young Thug took some really dramatic turn. How do you explain not doing drugs when you're caught with a drug pill in court given to you by someone you claim not to know? And how do you also explain to the judge that it isn't an act of disrespect to lie in the face of truth? Jeffrey Lamar Williams, aka Young Thug, is facing multiple criminal counts, including conspiracy to violate the state's RICO laws. Prosecutors claim that Thug is at the top seat of a criminal enterprise and co-founded of the street gang, YSL, in 2012. The trial has now become a high-profile case with significant implications for the individuals involved. The events that occurred during the trial in January took everyone by surprise. Family, friends, fans, foes, and perhaps even Young Thug, assuming he was unaware of his co-defendant's actions. The allegations pointed to the fact that Thug's co-defendant in the RICO case, Kylie Adams, who happened to be serving a life imprisonment term for a murder conviction, attempted to pass Percocet, marijuana, and tobacco wrapped up and disguised to smell as food. A deputy sheriff tried to fix the problem by taking away the drugs, but this situation made people wonder if the courtroom's security and safety rules were good enough. Following that, Young Thug maintained that he didn't know Mr. Adams and denied any involvement in the drug trade, stating that they had no prior knowledge of the scheme, nor did he engage in it. His attorney said that the pill was immediately handed over to the deputy without having any knowledge of what it was. Everyone probably would have believed him if he wasn't in court for a similar case. However, the circumstances betrayed his claims, as even a child could tell that accepting something from a stranger isn't good behavior, and hiding it under the table is something suspicious enough to be a concern. Among the numerous questions that have been raised, the one about Adams, who at that time was already in jail, attempting to pass drugs to Young Thug during the court proceedings, sparked concerns that suggested a planned and coordinated drug deal. Looking at how the weed was wrapped with some spices to mask the smell showed that it was well conceived and planned. But that's not the end of it. The court had to figure out what really happened because Mr. Adams swallowed some of the drugs. They took him to the hospital for a scan, but we don't know if he ate all of it. It's strange that a drug deal could happen in the courtroom with so many watchful eyes around. This seems to be a recurring issue that keeps coming up. There have been similar cases before, like when Yak Gotti's mom tried to sneak tobacco into the clothes she brought for him during a court hearing. It's puzzling why someone in jail for murder would take such a big risk and possibly get more charges, especially for someone they say they don't know. We still don't understand why they did this and how Adams even got the pills when he was already in jail. Whatever thought you have about Adams and Young Thug right now about this case is probably right. It's safe to admit that the move they pulled off was clever, but it also undermined the legal process. However, the fact that these forbidden items managed to enter the courtroom already indicates a lack of security and skill on the court's part, and it shows the offenders have no regard for the official rules. It may not be the only time Young Thug has been observed to defy judicial power. Before receiving the Percocet pill, he appeared in court for a motion hearing ahead of his trial involving the alleged gang YSL. But the hearing didn't happen as expected because there were technical problems at the Fulton County Courthouse that caused hours of delay. When the proceedings finally started, something unexpected happened during a Zoom call. Someone shared their screen and showed a dirty video of a completely nude man in the courtroom with the words "Free Young Thug" written on them. Deputies rushed to turn off the screens, and the judge tried to bring order back to the room, but it took some time for things to calm down. Even days after this happened, people couldn't stop talking about it online, since it was a technical difficulty. The court hearing was moved to a bigger courtroom on the first floor with only media, defendants, and their attorneys allowed inside. This was the first time Thug showed up in court since he got arrested in May for gang and RICO charges. It happened just one day after his buddy Gunna got out of jail after admitting he was guilty in the same case. During the court session, Thug's attorney, Brian Steele, made a strong argument, wanting to prevent the use of certain pieces of evidence that had been collected from Young Thug's house back in 2015. That was when he was arrested in Sandy Springs. This was a crucial moment, and it turned out to be a significant win for both Brian Steele and Young Thug. Judge Ural Glanville, who was overseeing the case, decided that the evidence taken from Young Thug's house without a proper search warrant couldn't be allowed in the upcoming trial. Thug was also charged in a big gang case against YSL. The prosecutor said YSL was a gang and Young Thug was the leader and its founder. However, Brian Steele and the defense team had a different perspective. They argued that YSL was merely a music record label and not involved in any secretive or illegal operations. As the trial date loomed, there were still some challenges to overcome. At least 3 of the defendants hadn't yet secured legal representation representation, which was somehow a concerning issue. The complexity of the case was undeniable, with a massive amount of evidence to sift through because the court had amassed over 3 terabytes of data relevant to the case. As it stands, Young Thug's RICO case is still ongoing. Jury selection began on January 4th, 2023, and is still ongoing. 14 of the 28 individuals indicted, including Thug, are set to stand trial in this case. Judge Glanville completed the initial phase of assessing potential jurors for any hardships that might prevent them from serving on a jury. He then moved on to questioning a large group of about 750 prospective jurors. This process is a crucial part of selecting a fair and unbiased jury for a legal case. Although it's expected to take several more months, Thug's been refused bail 4 times now on charges of murder, armed robbery, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, theft, drug dealing, carjacking, and witness intimidation. You know, they're using his rap lyrics, social media posts, and even his clothing with the slime logo as evidence against him in court. The defense is arguing that all these things should be protected under the First Amendment and not allowed as evidence. It's a big deal in the hip-hop community and the legal world and is getting a lot of attention. Young Thug is facing some serious charges, and if he's found guilty, he could be looking at life in prison. It's a tense trial, and nobody knows for sure how it's going to play out. But one thing's for sure, this case has major implications for the future of rap music. Suge Knight. Marion Hugh Knight Jr., aka Suge Knight, is an already terrifying name in the hip-hop rap world. But before that, he was famous when he started his music business in 1989. His big move was getting Vanilla Ice to sign over about $4 million in royalties from his song Ice Ice Baby to Death Row Records. But what people will really remember Knight for is teaming up with Dr. Dre to make Death Row Records. They released albums like The Chronic and Snoop Dogg's first album in 1993. Then in 1995, Knight helped Tupac Shakur get out of jail by paying $1.4 million. A year later, Tupac made an important album called All Eyes on Me, which was arguably the best part of Death Row Records in the 90s. However, Death Row Records fell apart over time, although it was later revived by Snoop Dogg in 2022. But Knight's activities after this weren't pleasant. In January 2015, he was charged with murder due to his involvement in a fatal hit-and-run incident. The incident occurred in Compton, California, involving Terry Carter, a friend of Knight, and CLE Bone Sloan, struck by Knight's vehicle during an altercation. The collision resulted in Terry Carter's death and injuries to Sloan. The Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office didn't hold back when they pointed fingers at Suge Knight. They threw serious charges at him, like murder, attempted murder, and 2 counts of hit and run. They had proof that he meant to use his car as a weapon, causing one person, Carter, to die and another, Sloan, to get hurt. At first, he turned himself in, probably hoping he could dodge some trouble or get a lighter punishment. But in September 2018, Suge Knight gave in and pleaded no contest to voluntary manslaughter. As part of a deal, he got slapped with a 28-year prison sentence. That one fateful day when he drove his car recklessly had big legal consequences for him. Initially, what started the altercation that led to the incident began on the set of a commercial for the movie Straight Outta Compton. Knight was involved in an argument with Sloan and it escalated into a physical altercation. Then Knight took off, but some say he came back later and drove his car into Sloan and Carter. The incident caused a big fuss in the media and got everyone talking about Knight and his past legal problems. As things moved to the courtroom, Knight found himself in a series of legal battles, facing various hearings and trials. He had to stay in custody while all of this played out. The case involved lots of appearances in court, with the lawyers from both sides presenting their arguments and showing evidence to back up their claims. It was a back and forth with the prosecution and defense going head to head to try and win their points. It was in one of those court appearances on October 13th, 2015, that Suge Knight did something unthinkable. Since he was not allowed to contact his son, Legend, who was celebrating his 6th birthday that day, he creatively attempted to wish his son a happy birthday by holding up a piece of paper that said, "Happy B-Day, Legend," when the TV camera turned in his direction. The message was hard to see at first, but he smiled at the cameraman and they zoomed in. The video of the incident went viral and people had mixed reactions. Some thought it was a touching gesture, highlighting that he was also a father and he clearly wanted to do something special for his son on his birthday. Others thought it was disrespectful to the court, and if that wasn't bad enough, Suge Knight got into more trouble. He was accused of paying off a witness in his murder trial, but it was his lawyers who were really behind it. The witness, Marvin Kinsey, said Knight offered him $25,000 to lie and say he saw weapons at the crime scene. Kinsey also said Knight told him to lie about what happened before the crash. Knight's lawyers said it wasn't true, but the district attorney's office believed there was enough proof to charge Knight with bribery. They ended up charging Knight with trying to bribe a witness, being an accessory after the fact, and trying to make someone lie under oath. He was sentenced to 3 years and 8 months in prison, which was to be served served concurrently with his sentence for the murder conviction. Knight getting found guilty of bribery was a big blow to his defense crew, and it might have made the jury doubt him. The bribery charges also raised questions about Knight's character. He had a long history of violence and intimidation, and the bribery charges suggested that he was willing to use those tactics to get what he wanted. Although the bribery charges were ultimately a minor part of Knight's overall legal case, they did provide some insight into his character and his willingness to break the law. As expected of the judicial system, the legal process faced delays and challenges, including changes in defense attorneys and issues with evidence and witnesses. Knight's health also became a concern during the trial, and he was hospitalized at various points. The case was closely followed by the media and the public due to its high-profile nature and Knight's history as a prominent figure in the music industry. Knight is not an easy man, and the judges must have had a hard time too, for them to have refused to reduce his bail from $10 million to $5 million. His attorney joked about Floyd Mayweather bailing him out since that day of the court sitting was also a boxing match everyone hoped Floyd would win. It was certainly a joke that Knight laughed at, but he also believed that what the attorney said would somehow be true, because for someone in jail, he needed every string of hope, although he's frequented the courthouse so much that he had a reputation, a terrifying one that had dated back to the early 1990s. In 1992, Knight was arrested and charged with 2 counts of assault with a deadly weapon. He was accused of pistol whipping 2 aspiring rappers in a Hollywood studio. And then, in 1995, Knight pleaded no contest to a felony charge of armed robbery and assault with a firearm. He was sentenced to 5 years probation. It didn't end there. In 1996, Knight was involved in a brawl alongside Tupac with a Crips gang member just hours before Tupac was shot and killed. Knight was accused of violating the terms of his probation by associating with gang members. And in 2003, Knight was convicted of violating his parole and sentenced to 9 months in jail. He probably did all this just for fun. He got arrested and charged with robbery for allegedly stealing a camera from a photographer in 2014. He also had to pay $19,000 for bail in 2008 because he was accused of hurting his ex-girlfriend. Clearly, he's a violent person who's willing to do strange things to achieve his goals. Just to state the obvious, Knight's case was settled for a 28-year prison sentence. The other charges of attempted murder and hit and run were dismissed, and the time he spent in jail before the trial counts towards his sentence, so he's still behind bars. Lil Rod, Rodalius Ryan, aka Lil Rod, found himself as one of the 13 defendants currently entangled in the ongoing Young Thug YSL RICO trial. The allegations against him include conspiracy to violate the RICO Act, alongside a slew of other charges like aggravated assault, armed robbery, and possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. Lil Rod isn't just a regular name. He's a rapper and a key member of the YSL crew, which is at the center of the RICO indictment. He's known for his hardcore lyrics and tough image, which is pretty common among rappers these days. He's no stranger to legal issues since he's been in prison since 2019 for being involved in the killing of Jamari Holmes, who was found dead in a stolen car with a gunshot wound to his head. The people who are prosecuting the YSL court case say that Lil Rod played a big role in the gang's illegal activities. They say he was part of violent acts like shootings and robberies and the gang's drug trafficking operations. But Lil Rod has maintained that he didn't do anything wrong, and he's sticking with that even as the court process goes on. His trial is set to continue in September 2023. The YSL case is not a solo act. It involves several other individuals, including prominent figures like Young Thug, which we've seen in this video, Gunna, Lil Duke, Yak Gotti, and other rappers and affiliates of the YSL collective. Basically, they've all got the same stories, which include a laundry list of accusations covering everything from murder and attempted murder to armed robbery, drug trafficking, and racketeering. So here's the scoop. Lil Rod apparently had a little brush-off with a deputy. The story goes that he spat on the officer, and then things got really messy as they started squabbling with the deputy, and Lil Rod having what you could call a messy brawl because he didn't want to exit the police car. The entire situation has been quite a tumultuous journey from the very beginning. Just when it seemed like we had experienced everything, a surprising revelation came to light when Rod's attorney alleged that he had been subjected to physical force by the Fulton County Police Department, resulting in many injuries. The impact of this revelation was significant as it triggered a flurry of activity in the courtroom. The atmosphere grew tense and unsettled. Well, the incident that sparked this commotion was rooted in the detection of a strong smell of marijuana emanating from Lil Rod.
Smell like raw marijuana. When you walk back into the courtroom before, multiple people notice that you smell like raw marijuana. You're going to be strip searched. Do you have any on your person? You just want to go ahead and hand it over right now. I can still smell it right here, right now.
Despite his attempts to conceal it. He was requested to step aside for a search. He hesitated but eventually complied by removing his shoes, pants, and shirt. However, the deputies were unsatisfied and insisted on a more thorough search. Ryan resisted, leading one of the deputies to remark that they didn't want to resort to handcuffs unnecessarily. Still, he was handcuffed after protesting. Nobody expected the scene of Lil Rod screaming because before that, the whole court seemed very quiet and in motion, as a formal hearing should. Even Young Thug was quite shaken with confusion when the incident happened, and cameras in the courtroom could picture his expression. In response to the escalating situation, security had to intervene and escort at least 3 individuals out of the courtroom. Ryan himself was led out by a group of deputies and placed in a holding cell. The chaos intensified, prompting officers to shout, "Everyone remain calm," and order the clearing of the courtroom. The situation had become increasingly chaotic and unpredictable. After the search, it was discovered that he actually had drugs on him sewed to his innerwear. One of the deputies said it was hidden really well.
Just get it out.
Man, all right, come on, where you got it? Man, come on, where you got it? My arm, bro. My arm. My arm, bro. My arm about to break. You got it.
Out of all those names thrown around in the RICO indictment against YSL, only 8 of them are still sticking around as co-defendants. Young Thug is right there in the mix, fighting for his freedom. They're all arguing that YSL is just a record label, not some criminal street gang like the prosecutors are saying. Now, if you take a look at the list of allegations these folks are facing, you'll find drug trafficking, intimidation, witness tampering, assault, conspiracy, and even attempted murder there. They might just be allegations, but at the center of this too, another dramatic thing happened, where it was reported that District Attorney Fannie Willis allegedly betrayed her conscience, which according to Lil Rod's dad, dangled a pretty tempting carrot in front of him. According to him, she apparently offered his freedom, but there's a catch. He'd have to snitch on Young Thug. Now, the angry dad who was expecting his son to be released as soon as he snitched was unhappy things didn't go as planned, and so he spilled the beans, saying,
Miss Willis went down to that jail and told my son, listen to what I say, I ain't telling you what I heard, I'm telling you what I know. If he say, Dog gave him $10,000 to help that boy, then we'll let you out of jail.
Sure, there might have been some talking back and forth, and Angela DeWilliams, Lil Rod's lawyer, joined in. And she didn't just talk anywhere, she sent a text message to a reporter. She basically said, "This is a false statement. Had any offer been given to my client, the state would have gone through me since Mr. Ryan is represented by counsel." She probably wanted to make it clear that she was keeping an eye on things. Lil Rod's got his legal eagle watching out for him, but that still doesn't negate spitting on an officer of the law for whatever reason. YNW Melly. So, about YNW Melly, the Florida rapper. You might remember him from his hit song Murder on My Mind back in 2018. He was born on May 1st, 1999 in Gifford, Florida. Well, he probably had murder on his mind to have carried out his first experiment with his friends, an event that overshadowed his musical fame and brought him infamy from the trial. Back in October 2018, Melly's pals Anthony Williams, aka YNW Sack Chaser, and Christopher Thomas Jr., aka YNW Juvie, were found shot dead in a car in Melly's hometown, Miramar, Florida. The prosecutors said Melly and a man named Cortland Henry, aka YNW Bortland, who allegedly drove the vehicle that became the crime scene, did the shooting and made it look like a drive-by. But the defense argues it was a messed up robbery. They got caught and charged for the murders. The prosecution presented witness testimonies, DNA evidence, and even cell phone records as evidence. Meanwhile, the defense had their own game, bringing in Demon's friends and family to testify and some experts to talk about those cell phone records. The jury said Demons was guilty, not just once, but on 2 counts of first-degree murder. The sentence, life in prison without parole. After the verdict was announced, things got even more intense. Melly caused quite a stir when he blew a kiss to the families of the defendants. People were really angry about this, thinking it was really disrespectful to the families of the victims. The courtroom turned into a real emotional roller coaster. It was also a cringeworthy moment that most people would find hard to watch. Melly's mom, Jamie Demons King, was in tears and needed some help to leave the place. She later said she was deleting social media because she couldn't handle all the emotions and stress caused by this situation. In her words, "I'm deleting this app. I can't be crying and making myself upset because of a lying clout chaser who won't even show his face in court but cares so much. I had 1 heart attack already because of stress. I refuse to let this kill me. I try to be peaceful and respectful to all of you. I pray for everyone because I know it's the right thing to do." The families of the defendants were also upset, but they didn't show it as much as Melly's mom did. One of the victims' mothers, Leandra Phillips, mentioned that
he did it a couple times.
Yeah.
So he was doing it a couple times. That wasn't his first time.
And she's not wrong. YNW Melly was seen smiling and laughing during the trial, but it's really the blowing a kiss part that got everyone talking online. At first, he seemed to be praying, and then he surprised everyone by blowing a kiss. She obviously didn't approve of his actions and thought that what he did was disrespectful. She was upset because he seemed unremorseful while praying, even smiling. She believed that it wasn't the right time for that. Christopher's aunt Ashley shared that Melly was someone they all knew, loved, and trusted. She mentioned how they had seen him grow up, and now they were hoping for justice in this tragic case. The situation was really sad and serious. The victim's family had been close to all 4 individuals involved. Before the murder charges, Melly was even considered a best friend. At one point, he had been shown footage of his injured friends in the hospital and reportedly cried. People wondered if it was guilt or just fake tears. Something interesting happened during the court proceedings, though it wasn't part of the same trial. YNW Melly's lawyer, Erica Russell, whispered something to him and covered her mouth with a notebook that had evil plans and stuff written on it. This incident sparked reactions on social media. Some found it funny, while others thought it was unprofessional. People were curious about what was written in the notebook and if it contained any information that could be used against Melly in his trial. Russell later clarified that the notebook was just a joke and that it didn't contain any actual plans for evil. She said that she had brought it to court to keep Melly's spirits up and that he found it funny. The incident didn't seem to have any lasting impact on Melly's trial, which has been declared a mistrial. Melly is still facing 2 first-degree murder charges. With so many events happening and causing gossip over the net, YNW Melly was allegedly associated with the Bloods, a notorious street gang known for its presence in various parts of the United States. In some of his songs and social media posts, Melly has referenced his affiliation with the Bloods, using their hand signs and incorporating their symbols into his persona. Rappers like Young Thug and French Montana were listed in his case file, which proves that he was affiliated with them. The claim is that many gangsters strike deals with rappers who bring in the cash with a lot of popularity, while they provide support for future endeavors and shady ventures. How true this is or was has not been definite. Well, this whole case is a real head-scratcher. There are so many different views on what actually went down that led to Melly's conviction. It's become a hot topic and people will be talking about it for a long time to come, but the story doesn't seem to be over yet. It's likely Melly's lawyers will appeal when the trial continues because so far they've been arguing that the prosecution's case was all based on circumstantial evidence, and there was reasonable doubt about his guilt. It's a complex case with many different angles and opinions flying around, but one thing's for sure, it's a case that's going to be talked about for a long time. Daryl "Mathboy" Brooks. Daryl "Mathboy" Brooks is one rapper who may not have the opportunity to rap anymore because he was convicted of killing 6 people and injuring dozens more in a 2021 attack on a Christmas parade in Waukesha, Wisconsin. Brooks was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin in 1982 and began rapping in his early teens. He released his first mixtape in 2014 under the name Mathboy Fly and had a small following, but was not a well-known rapper. Back in 2021, on November 21st, Brooks got into a fight with his ex-girlfriend, and things took a really bad turn. After the fight, he hopped into his red Ford Escape and drove right into the Christmas parade happening in downtown Waukesha. It's sad to say, but his SUV plowed through the crowd, and 6 people lost their lives, while many others got hurt. The authorities, however, caught Brooks shortly after the horrible incident. They found his car with a messed up hood parked in someone's driveway. He had asked a neighbor for help, stating that he was homeless and needed to get an Uber. The neighbor, however, alerted the police, who were already searching for him after the incident that had occurred a few minutes ago. He was later arrested, but it's still not really clear why he did what he did. Brooks did represent himself in court, and he's said that he wasn't trying to target the parade. He claimed he was just driving recklessly and lost control of his car, but the prosecution on the other side argued that he actually meant to drive into the parade, and he did it because he was really angry and full of hate. Now, Brooks isn't exactly a saint, because before the parade mess, he had a bunch of run-ins with the law. He'd been arrested a bunch of times and even spent time in prison twice, and in the months leading up to the parade, he was involved in more fights at home. Just 2 days before the parade disaster, he'd been let out of jail. No matter what the reason was, what happened in Waukesha that day was beyond awful. People lost their lives because of Brooks's actions, and many others suffered. Mathboy's story goes way beyond just what you might have heard. In one of his music videos for a song called Half a Ticket, Mathboy was rapping with really strong and violent words while holding a big gun. He and another rapper were playing around with these guns, and in one part, it seemed like they even shot one of them. And the vehicle he used in the video was the same type that was was used in a real-life crushing incident. Now, when they were having a trial to figure out what happened, they actually showed this rap video to prove that Math Boy had the same kind of car as the one that was used in the crime. But here's the twist. Math Boy's mom said that he didn't fully understand what he was doing because he was not mentally stable. She wrote a really long letter to the judge explaining that he wasn't thinking clearly, and she was worried that he'd be upset if he found out she had written the letter. But in that same video, Math Boy actually rapped about doing bad stuff and breaking the law. So it's like he's saying two different things. On one side, his family is telling the court that he's not well and didn't mean to harm anyone. But on the other side, his music shows that he knows what crime is and how it works. So when the jury had to decide what to do, they talked about it for about 3 hours and 15 minutes before making a decision. When they finally said what they thought, Math Boy just kept his head down and didn't even look at the people who were deciding his fate. It was hard to figure out what was really going on in Math Boy's head. Prosecutors claimed that after Brooks fought with his ex and drove directly into the parade, police had warned him to stop, but he didn't. And then they even fired at him, but he kept going. The trial was quite intense, and at several points he got pretty disruptive in court, even removing his shirt and refusing to recognize his own name.
He has shown a complete and utter disrespect for the simple rules of civility. He has been removed from the courtroom multiple times. This morning alone, he started interrupting this court within a minute of the court calling the case.
He also told the judge, "You need to do your job," for asking him to provide a witness.
I don't need your advice.
I have to give you advisements, sir, regarding your right to testify.
I need to do your job without prejudice and without bias.
Mr. Brooks has now interrupted me multiple times. He's failing to respect the court's oral rulings here today. It's something that he's done repeatedly throughout this trial.
He was also caught on camera saying mean things to the judge like,
I don't even want to be in here that much longer. Just do what you got to do so I can get up out of here. I'm tired of being in the courtroom that has no integrity whatsoever. How can you even call yourself a judge?
Brooks, I need to make...
And when he was told he'd be taken to the next courtroom for demeanor, he retaliated by yelling at the judge.
Don't try to address me like that, like we cool. You don't have no integrity. How can you even call yourself a...
That's just a few of the many instances he's been disrespectful in court. Well, since he's been in jail pending final trial, he's been sending letters home. And in one letter, Brooks wrote that a corrections officer told him, "I hope they give this stupid N-word life in prison. They are going to kill him in prison." He also mentioned that fellow inmates told him that some officers offered them money to harm him and tamper with his food. Brooks was worried about not getting the right medical help in jail. He talked about having headaches, feeling dizzy, and chest pains, but they wouldn't let him see a doctor. His mom, LaWanda Robertson, gave these letters to the news and said she's really concerned for her son's safety and thinks he's being treated unfairly. Brooks was convicted on whopping 76 charges, including 6 counts of first-degree intentional homicide that Judge Doro stated he was deserving of. As for the amount of damages Brooks will have to pay, that's still up in the air, but it's likely to be in the millions. The families of the victims will have to prove that Brooks's actions directly caused their injuries and led to significant financial and emotional losses. The civil lawsuit is just starting, and it's expected to take a few years to resolve. But the victims' families will certainly push to seek justice for their loved ones, with the hope that they'll be awarded substantial damages. Besides the civil lawsuit, Brooks is also facing other financial penalties. He was ordered to pay $523,293.01 in total to victims and insurance companies, which includes about $171,000 in restitution. The full amount of money Brooks will have to pay is still unknown, but it's likely to be a hefty sum. The victims' families won't back down and will continue fighting for the justice they deserve and the financial recovery they need, especially with his adamant attitude. This may not be all you'll see when it comes to the rap scene, as rappers are taking their confident style to courtrooms, and these events will make you rethink how music and law can mix in surprising ways. Click on any of the cards on your screen if you'd like more stories like this.